Mental health isn't spoken about enough, especially for men. The phrases, boys don't cry and man up, have been used for generations now. But what does it mean to be a man? Are men different biologically regarding their emotions? Or are we scared to shed a little bit of the masculinity that we have by being vulnerable? As Gen Z looks ahead, it's time to reframe these social stigmas and embrace the sensitive sides of being a man. Starting off with my own experiences regarding the topic. How did I come about this? One day after my examinations ended, I simply had enough. It was a long day. I fought with some people I shouldn't have. I, most importantly, got my physics exam marks back, and I lost a few matches after school as well. That day, on the way home, I tried to contain my emotions to the best of my abilities. But the moment I arrived home and I started telling my parents about my marks, I immediately broke down. It was then that my mother uttered a phrase that sparked this journey of self realization for me. She said, I haven't seen him cry in so long. That made me wonder, was I different emotionally compared to the rest of the people around me? Did I not share my emotions as much? Or why was I keeping all these emotions to myself to the point where this breakdown was the only time I let myself go fully? Looking back into my own past, I grew up in a traditional Indian household with a lot of time being spent with my grandparents. The grandparents, as you know, are the past generation, and as I grew up, the phrase boys don't cry was used frequently with me in the household. Whether it was getting lesser time on the laptop, falling down while playing, or simply getting tagged in the local cops and robbers game, I was on the verge of tears for every little thing growing up. What I noticed over time, though, was that the same treatment was not treated for my female cousins. Whenever similar things happened to them, they were allowed to embrace their emotions in full, let it all out. But here I was, containing myself with every little thing, trying to keep it all inside me. Secondly, I've had the talent and I've been blessed with the opportunities of being a national level tennis player. This shaped my character in a very important way. Competing in tennis is extremely difficult. You're by yourself on the court, there's no one to help you, and you have only yourself to blame for your shortcomings. Tennis is particularly difficult in the aspect where sometimes you train weeks or months for a particular tournament, and a bad result can send you home in an instant. Nothing else to blame, just one bad match. Coaches often teach us to not let our emotions get the better of us on court. What about off court? There were times after I've lost big matches, finals, or the first round itself, and it's hurt me deeply. Despite this, I was encouraged to keep it all inside me and keep these emotions bottled up for another day. I remember a particular instant where I'd lost a close final match, and after the final, I could not contain it anymore. I resorted myself to a corner and started letting it out. However, when I noticed that other people were looking from distance at me and my father sitting there, I started saying, yeah, I was just over there stretching after the match. Little things like these all build up to the aspect of mental health. Was it deteriorating inside me, keeping it up inside for so long? Similarly, I would like to shed light on a little circumstance that I built, or disguise, if you will, at the age of 12. I found that you can play tennis while wearing sunglasses. The importance of wearing sunglasses is obviously that it combats the sun while you're playing. But even after matches, I used to keep my sunglasses on to hide the fact that I was crying my eyes out underneath them. Now, this served as the perfect disguise, and I was very happy to have come up with it at age 12. Luckily, as I grew older, I gained more control of my emotions. Moving on to a campaign that is a very dear place in my heart, the No Shave November campaign. This sheds light that masculinity does not have one particular definition, and people often raise awareness for men's mental health by something as simple as donating money and growing facial hair. Now, this campaign inspired me to take up the advantage and initiative and organize it in my own school as well. This challenges the idea of what is masculinity. Now, as Gen Z looks into the future, let's look at some historical examples first. Historically, men were known as the protectors and the providers for their families. Let me show you an image. Does that look like the ideal male? Strong physique, a warrior. There were dynasties formed due to this, emperors conquering lands like no other. But this picture shares the misconception of correlating physical strength with your mental strength. Maybe not so much of a past example. Let's delve into something into the present. In the present, the most male dominated fields in today's world are that of construction workers, electricians, carpenters, plumbers, you name it. These fields are running our households. Does that look masculine to you? Now, I'm going to show you a third picture which contradicts these two ideas. What about if we observe a male in a predominantly female dominated field? For instance, a male nurse. Nurses or nursing assistants is a field which is dominated by women. Does the third picture not look as masculine to you as the first two? Some might say it does. Does that remove any of its significance from the importance of the role? This is why the social stigmas need to change, because something as simple as correlating physical and mental strength together is causing deterioration of men's mental health over time. Let's delve into more of a biological aspect regarding this. Let me introduce you to our brain. Our brain has a left and a right hemisphere. Analyzing some studies that have been done on this topic before, we see the same stimulus was exposed to both men and women. This was to test how they would react with their emotions. What we saw was that the left side of the brain seemed to have been changed significantly more than the right side of the brain because there were not enough connections formed between the right and the left sides of the brain in men during this experiment. Now, why is this significant? The right side of your brain primarily does your emotional processing. The left side of the brain, you might have guessed it, is responsible for speech. The women were reacting the same way as men in the right sides of their brain. But when it came to speaking about it, the connections simply weren't formed. This is the evolution of neglection for generations on generations. Let me introduce you to another part of our brain. This is the amygdala. This part of the brain is one of the only parts of the brain that is used more dominantly in males than in females. And it has evolved to become slightly larger in size as well in males compared to females. What does the amygdala do? The amygdala is responsible for the control of aggression and anger. You might be correlating the data here. Not talking about it, forming those connections between the right and the left sides of your brain has led to this part of your brain becoming larger in size. Now, this sort of evolution is deteriorating for men's mental health significantly. We tend to take it out on other things that are so much worse rather than simply communicating about it to someone else. Both these studies have essentially shown that men are experiencing the same emotions as women. The stimulus is the same, and the right side of the brain is the exact same. However, when it comes to talking about it, that's where the difference lies. Is it due to society, or is it due to our own ideals of what a masculine man should be looking like? Let me show you a few statistics that you may or may not have known. Firstly, November is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, I'm sure around Bangalore, you might have seen pink ribbons or balloons being put up in restaurants offering special discounts for Women's Day. Men's Day is on November 19th, 2023. How many people here knew that? I feel Men's Day might possibly be the least celebrated day in all of the days, simply because no one cares about it. Isn't it equally as important? There's a whole month dedicated to male suicide prevention and men's mental health, simply because everyone knows that the males also experience the same things, yet for some reason we're refraining from talking about it. If we delve into a dark concept of suicide rate as particular, we can see men make up 49% of our global population, but they make up 80% of the suicide rate. This means a man is 4 times more likely to commit suicide than a female. And this is directly been correlated through various studies due to the fact that men are simply not speaking up about it. A man at times finds it best to disappear from everything, to end it all, rather than simply go and have a conversation because he doesn't want to be seen as the weak guy. This is why the social stigmas need to change. Similarly, there is a concept regarding therapy. Now, therapy in India by itself is not spoken about as much, and it is slightly associated with weakness. Why is that? Even in the field of therapy, we see rarely males going to therapy compared to females. If we listen to the older generation about it, why would you need to pay someone to talk to them about how you're feeling, right? Maybe because that's the only place you feel safe enough to. Maybe we should encourage therapy to this new generation that we will raise in the future so that we can lower these other averages that have been spiking over the last few decades simply because men are not speaking up what they should. Here, I would want to introduce a quote that is taken from the popular anime of Naruto, but don't let that deviate away from the powerfulness of the quote. It states, "A man doesn't cry because he's weak. He cries because he's been strong for too long." Let that sink in. Men's mental health has been neglected enough, and the societal stigmas aren't helping us either. It's time to speak up and make a change. And as Gen Z looks into the future, it's important to to use this evidence and raise our future generations in an environment where it's okay for anyone to speak up, especially the men, so that we can lower the averages, change this evolution and the pattern that has been going on for years, change the stigma of masculinity or what a masculine man is, because every male is important and every life is equally as important. Thank you.